We've seen a very divisive, antagonistic campaign from the NDP. They're more than happy to attack me personally, which accomplishes nothing. They talk about us and them, the good people and the bad people. We don't do that. We talk about making British Columbia better for everybody. We're committed to making this a place where there's equality, fairness, opportunity for everybody. And that means some very specific things that need to get done too, because we're in this pandemic and it's going to do a lot of damage to our economy over the winter. There are already the consequences you're seeing of restaurants closing up, retail shops closing, and the best estimate is that 1 out of 4 businesses will close them forever in the next 12 months. This is going to be very, very damaging to Surrey and to British Columbia. So what have we said? We can make it better. We can do a better job. We can abolish provincial sales tax for a year and then move it to 3% after that to give people the chance to invest. We go to places like an equipment dealer in Campbell River or a restaurant or a retail outlet in Richmond yesterday, and they said that would be great because it will encourage people to come out. It will save them the cost of administering the provincial sales tax and put everything on sale in this beautiful province of ours. We've talked about abolishing the small business income tax to put money back in the hands of small businesses so they can hire people and invest. We're going to have to support our tourism and hospitality industries over the winter. Otherwise, they're all going to go broke, and there'll be nothing to visit in British Columbia when the tourists eventually come back. We've talked about taking care of seniors with a $7,000 tax credit for things like home care, housekeeping, home repairs, so people can live out their lives as long as they can and as long as they want to, and age in the right place, which is their own home. It's the safest place for them. We've talked about $10 a day daycare for families with an income of less than $65,000, $20 a day for under $90,000, because we have to get these people back in the workforce. And if they're in the home with the kids at home and they can't get out the door, they will be in very, very bad economic shape a year from now. So we have to make sure we're creating that sense of opportunity for everybody. And more practically, we talk about things like replacing that hopelessly outdated Massey Tunnel with a proper bridge, a 10-lane bridge, to make sure that Highway 91 is serviced completely. Traffic can actually move again out of South Surrey, North Delta, and right here in Panorama. So there's a lot of work to be done. We have a plan. We have a big, bold plan to do things. Sadly, we see the NDP offering nothing more really than a $1,000 bribe for everybody in British Columbia. So they tax you $1,200 and give you back $1,000. What does that accomplish? Nothing. Our plan to remove PST would save the average family $1,721, which they will reinvest in British Columbia, because you don't save on the PST unless you spend in BC. And that means things as simple as a pair of shoes or a truck or an excavator. All of those things incur provincial sales tax, and there'll be big savings in the construction industry so they can actually get on with building BC. So you can see there's a lot of work to be done. We're very keen to get on with doing it, and we're very keen to get on with winning this election. It'll be done one seat at a time. There are 87 different elections in this province. Some of them are fairly easy to predict, others are not. Some are going to be hard fought, like Surrey Panorama. We have the right candidate and we have the right team to make sure that we're successful in this riding and in many other ridings throughout the Lower Mainland. So we're looking forward to the results on Saturday. They will be incomplete. The chance of a final result on Saturday is actually very low, with close to 1 million postal votes to be counted in the 2 weeks after that. So get ready for an interesting couple of weeks coming up. We're ready for it. We're very keen to get on with this election. Advanced polls have already been running for over a week, and it's a chance for everybody to get out and vote. So far, about 1 million people have voted, and we hope that another couple of million get out there and use their democratic rights that they got when they were either born in this country or when they arrived in this country. It is essential for people to use their right to vote, and that way we'll get the government that is the choice of the people. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to questions. Go ahead.
Hi, actually, my name is Priyanka Mehta. I'm from ZTV Canada. My question is, you're talking about eliminating PST to save people's money, but what about high fuel prices? Because sometimes people are rushing towards US to get fuel at low prices.
Yes, and of course, fuel is no longer an issue going to the USA because that's impossible. But at the same time, we've been very concerned about high fuel prices. Right now, they're kind of moderate. But when they spiked to about $1.70 per litre, we said it was time to drop the motor fuel tax to make fuel more affordable for British Columbians The NDP did nothing about that. They just laughed it off. But if they head back up again, we'll be having a plan to save people money.
So we will start like that. So next.
Okay, so my question is, Dr. Gulzar Chima announced on one of the radio stations that BC Liberal will introduce hybrid model in which taxi operator can, they can moderate their fee structure according to their needs, and he will also be providing a $12,000 upgrade for the accessible vehicles. So is this part of the election platform? Will you do it and commit?
Yes, we're completely comfortable with the idea of assisting the taxi industry in this transition that's underway. They need a level playing field. They need a better insurance product that gives them more flexibility. We can do that by challenging ICBC's monopoly. We need to stick with the Class 4 driver's license for all ride-hailing and taxis. We need the hybrid fee structure, the fare structure that will make it more flexible for the taxi industry. And we're completely supportive of transition fund to get the taxi industry modernized and able to compete. This is especially true when it comes to the wheelchair accessible taxis, where the taxi industry is asked to carry all of that extra cost with no compensation. So we've talked about an appropriate fund to provide for the adjustment of vehicles for use by wheelchair accessible taxi fares.
Mr. Bhatt. Sure.
Mr. Wilkinson, this is Curiosity from Connecticut. What do you think of NDP's promise that if re-elected, they will be building a dedicated museum for South Asian communities' heritage? Do you think such a step is a worthy step of acknowledging the contribution of South Asian community and a step towards fighting systemic racism in BC?
Yes, I was just over on the Komagata Maru street, and I thought to myself, is it enough just to have a street sign? Or do we have to have a proper understanding of where our South Asian community came from? My father was born in India, but that doesn't lead me to understand the entire experience of Punjabi people and South Asian people who came here, starting in the 1870s. And then, of course, through the horror of the Komagata Maru, and then into the more extensive immigration that happened and accelerated in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Our South Asian community is fundamental to who we are now as British Columbians. It's a very large and very entrepreneurial and hardworking community. And it's time we had the facility to commemorate this history before it gets forgotten. Because you have to remember, we have some very senior members of our South Asian community who have the knowledge of how things came to be and what they experienced. We can't just lose that. So an institution to commemorate it is entirely appropriate.
My question is every party is making promises will do, but it's a no such time limit, like how long you can to make a promise. And your party, have you concerned with a promise or financial phenomenon? Can we do that or not? And time goes.
One of the key things that we have said in terms of getting rid of provincial sales tax came from Jock Finlayson, who's the chief economist at the BC Business Council, who used to be a governor on the Bank of Canada. And they said the fastest way to get this economy going again would be to cut the provincial sales tax in half. We said, well, let's speed it up even more by cutting it out completely. And gladly, the Business Council has totally agreed with that, and capable economists agree with that approach. If we cut consumption taxes, it helps the people with lower incomes the most, and it drives people to invest. So you've probably already talked to people who say, well, they might wait to buy a car, or they might wait to buy a trailer for their tractor trailer unit to see if the Liberals form government. Because if we form government, they will save all that PST. A $60,000 trailer, that's a $4,200 savings. A $350,000 dump truck, that's a $25,000 savings. They can reinvest that in our communities and lead us all to greater prosperity.
What about the brand?
I think we're one question, aren't we?
Time limit?
Yeah.
Because the half question is not answered. It's a time limit for the promises.
Sorry.
Like,
No, say it.
time limit, like for the hospital, like you will complete in 23 or 24, like
Timeline.
Sorry, for the hospital.
for anything, any promises for timeline. Yeah.
Well, the PST reduction would be immediate. The construction of the Massey Tunnel Replacement Bridge will be immediate. Most of these things can be implemented almost immediately. Things like hospital construction we're happy to talk about because the NDP had 13 years in government since 1991. The number of hospitals they built was 0. They promised the Abbotsford Hospital 12 separate times. They did nothing. They've promised a South Surrey Hospital multiple times. They have accomplished nothing. We had 16 years in office, including Dr. Chima's time. We built 14 hospitals. So we know what we're doing, we get things done.
Just one question from reporter Army. So you are suggesting a pause on police transition, but Surrey said it's already a done deal. Don't you think this issue is just an election stunt for Surrey residents?
What we're concerned about is the amount of uncertainty we heard on the doorstep. As soon as this election was called, we started visiting people in their own homes. And what happened was throughout Surrey, we heard, we don't know what this transition to policing is going to cost. We don't know how it's going to work. We don't know how it will be better. So we don't want more information. And as soon as we started to hear that consistently throughout Surrey, we said, well, it's time to get the information out, and it's time to respect the choice of the people of Surrey by having a referendum. That's respecting the people of Surrey.
So you guys are both medical doctors, medical background, turned into a politician. Dr. Chima is a doctor. What do you think of calling this election during pandemic?
Oh, it's grossly irresponsible. And we actually saw that with the federal NDP leader yesterday protesting what a stupid idea it was to call an election during a pandemic. Quite irresponsible and dangerous, he said. And yet that's exactly what the NDP did here. We're now into the second wave of this pandemic. The case count is rising rapidly every day. And why are we having an election during this time? For one reason, John Horgan's selfish ambition. There's no other reason, because they had another year to govern with the Green Party, and he basically insulted the Green Party leader, tore up their agreement, and said he wanted an election solely for the benefit of John Horgan. It's time for people to stand up to John Horgan and say, it's not your province, it's our province. It's time for us to have a government that's going to listen to us, not serve his ambitions.
I just want to follow up with the question from Tommy, which was confirmation stuff like that. Thank you for taking my call the other day. I appreciate it. To follow up on the question on the referendum, non-binding referendum on the Surrey tourism situation or issue. John Hogan's answer was, this is a municipal issues, not provincial. And getting involved in that is not a good idea. Why didn't the Liberal Party just take the same stand and say, Surrey didn't go to election a couple of years ago, they decided what they wanted, they got it. Why did they get involved in the municipal election on the council as well?
It's rare to see a petition with 50,000 names on it, and it's rare to see lawn signs all over Surrey saying that they have a particular view of what to do about policing. And so when we heard that on the doorstep, almost every door we knocked on in the first 2 weeks of the campaign, we said it's time to listen to the people of Surrey. And the best way to listen to the people of Surrey is to give them the information that they're asking for, which they're entitled to, and then give them a chance to express their wishes in a referendum. We think that's the right way to go.
Just to follow up, it's non-binding at the same time. There's a cost involved as well. And at the end of the day, my understanding of the political, how it's all set up, the systems, is that you do not get involved in municipal issues.
Well, there's a reason why the Referendum Act provides that the provincial cabinet can call for an expression of public opinion on any issue, and the provincial cabinet can define the geographic area of the question. That's what the Referendum Act provides for, and that's what we will do.
Understand? It is big news for BC voters. Democracy was declared, NDP snapped over India, and they are going to fight a suit against them. So the European or this, you are also a professional, are you behind this move?
The Constitution Act of British Columbia provides for elections under various circumstances. John Horgan passed an amendment to that act, providing that there would be a fixed election date in October of 2021. And then he turned around within 2 years and broke the law that he wrote. This makes no sense. It's just unethical. It's immoral, and Democracy Watch is going to find out if it was illegal by taking it to court.
Hi, Andrew. I was just
just wondering what is exactly the funding one that's been allocated to it, and because it's $4.5 billion in total revenue in terms of transportation, that wasn't really revealed how much will go to this particular infrastructure project. And also, are we going to see any road mobility pricing?
You won't see road mobility pricing under the BC Liberals. And that's a very good question for John Horgan, because yesterday on CKNW, he refused to answer the question. It really makes you wonder what John Horgan's about when he's asked a direct question, he won't answer it. We answer questions. And in terms of the Massey Tunnel Replacement Bridge, we had a deal that bridge would be completed with all the approaches and a whole bunch of transit improvements for $900 million under budget. It was ready to go and was actually under construction for $2.6 billion. The NDP threw that away. It was a great deal, and the NDP threw it into the garbage can. We're back to zero. So now we'll have to get new bids on the bridge because the people who were doing the original bids have walked away. They left 6 kilometers of sand there that cost $95 million to put in place, and the NDP have accomplished nothing except to waste a lot of money and waste 5 years.
Paul Hill, Second Watch newspaper. Mr. Wilkinson, the NDP just today announced the Accessibility Act for British Columbians with disabilities. The Americans have had Americans with disability debt for decades and decades. Canada brought in the Accessibility Act, but it does not cover anything. Shane Simpson has been working on this, and all he did was he was study it for the last 3 years and said if they are going to study more and take it in. While there has nothing been practically done for persons with disabilities. And the clawback system on their pensions is, I don't know how many decades old, and that has prevented them from lifting them out of poverty. The federal government, with its new program of the new one that has come with the $500, have raised the limit to $38,000, not on a monthly basis, but the clawback comes in on a yearly basis, after the year. What are your thoughts on the Accessibility Act? And secondly, about studying this to change the system from a monthly basis to a yearly basis, so these people, when they work in 4 months and make extra money, it gives them something to lift out of poverty, rather than 1 month they work and next month their pension is clawed back. That it be done on a yearly basis.
Mr. Gill has a great deal of detailed knowledge of this. My knowledge of this field is from having grown up with my younger sister with a severe disability. She lives in a group home in Alberta, and to this day, she is my sister. And so this issue is very close to my heart. I think we all have to realize that Mr. Gill raises very valid points, that the system for dealing with disability and with the income for people with disabilities is outdated. It needs to be reviewed. And as he also wisely points out, in the United States, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, has been around for about 25 years, and yet Canada has not done comparable things until very recently. So this requires a wholesale review because some of it is federal, but most of it is provincial in terms of incomes and in terms of access to buildings and those kinds of things. One small thing that we have put in our platform in this regard is to make sure that new developments, like you see so much of in Surrey, have a certain percentage of units that are fully accessible so that people can not only live in them with disabilities, but also visit with disabilities, because so many people with who need a wheelchair have trouble going and visiting their friends because of one step or because of a narrow door. And we can do better. That's a small step toward what Mr. Gill talks about, but we need a wholesale review of income for people with disabilities.
Mr. Wilkinson, I think I have time for a second question, I guess. So ICBC, your plan is to privatize that.
Well, that's perhaps a misunderstanding. What we've said with ICBC is the existing ICBC can carry on. It's going to no fault, and that's fine. But people aren't liking the experience with ICBC, so why not allow competition? Is there any reason why you can't allow competition? Why is there a monopoly? It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world like it is in BC because it doesn't work very well. No one has ever copied ICBC in 47 years. Saskatchewan has both no fault and regular insurance. You can take your pick. Quebec has a system with no fault insurance, and they also have commercial insurance for vehicle damage. There's nothing wrong with that. Why are we forced to go with the state-run insurer even if we don't want to? And this is particularly true for commercial uses, for construction vehicles, for buses, and for taxis. They need to be able to choose coverage that works for them. They need the agility of competition in the marketplace so they can decide on a sophisticated basis which product is best for them. Right now they have no choice. Take ICBC or you can't drive. And we need to change that.
So another question from ZTV Canada. What made the opponent party feel and say? They once commented that you are the leader of rich people and not middle class and poor. Why is that?
Well, the NDP talk a lot of nonsense, and we have to keep an eye on their tendency to be quite dishonest. They make things up, plain and simple. Just like they made up that they would build an Abbotsford hospital for 10 years and never lifted a finger. Just like they say that we will be changing some taxes, and they're just making things up to see if people will accept it. They're not telling the truth. We are the party that's saying we need affordable daycare for people at the bottom of the income spectrum. The people most in need in our society need to be taken care of. We're saying get rid of the provincial sales tax, which is most beneficial to people with lower incomes. That's the approach to getting people back on their feet and building our society and building our economy. Not the NDP's threats and division and a simple $1,000 check that's really going to accomplish nothing. We need to rebuild British Columbia and restore confidence, and we'll do that with a comprehensive, big idea plan, not with a bribe from the NDP.
What about the homeless people that we see around sometimes in the parks, around malls?
Homelessness, we've said consistently, we have to address the causes. Some people have run out of money, like the people sleeping in the park near my house. They don't need anything but a little bit of money to get them back into the world. Some people are suffering from mental illness. We need to treat their mental illness. Some people have brain injuries, as Dr. Chima and I know very well. People who've suffered from drug overdoses often have damaged brains, and they're never going to come back to what they were. That's a totally different approach than the other causes. So we have to make sure we're dealing with these people as human beings and making sure that they get the treatment they need. Instead of the NDP approach, one of their cabinet ministers said, it doesn't work to scoop people up out of a park, dump them in a hotel, and expect that to be successful. You know what? She's right. But that's exactly what the NDP have done repeatedly in Vancouver, Victoria, Nanaimo, and it has been a total failure. But they refuse to accept that.
And the same question goes with hand in hand. Poverty, mental health, opioid crisis. So what is your take on that?
Well, the drug addiction situation in British Columbia has reached intolerable levels. What we've got to do is find a pathway for people to get off drugs. Dr. Chima and I both know this very well. You do not want people to be dependent on addictive drugs their whole life. The goal is to get them off drugs. If it's your sister or mother or daughter, you don't want them injecting heroin for the rest of their life. You want them to be able to lead a meaningful life and get off drugs. And part of that is what we call a prescription monitoring program that Dr. Chima and I are both very familiar with. We've been pushing the NDP for this for 3 years, and they keep saying they'll do it, but nothing happens. Nothing happens, nothing happens. What we need, and it already exists in 49 American states, is a program to monitor the use of powerful narcotics in the prescription world so that people can have a way of being weaned off those drugs when they've been on them for too long.
Yeah, and those of you who are doctors, this is BC College of Family Physicians, which has given notice to marks to Liberals' proposals on issues such as access to family doctor, indigenous health, pandemic readiness, and overdose crisis. How do you reconcile your statement from yesterday about a doctor being in your office and your proposal not doing so good in this report card?
Well, they never asked us. They never talked to me. They never talked to Dr. Chima. And what we've said is when you look at the NDP record, In 1991, there were 160 positions at UBC Medical School. The NDP promptly knocked it down to 120 and left it there for 10 years. We lost 400 trained physicians in British Columbia because of the NDP. We took office and immediately went from 120 to 288. And that's where it stayed, because we are committed to making access to medical care as effective as it possibly can be. We introduced the programs in Victoria, Surrey, Kelowna, and Prince George. The NDP accomplished nothing in that regard. And in our platform, we have said it's time to make sure that we have enough medical doctors, nurses, and other health professionals by taking people with international qualifications, getting them evaluated and making it possible for them to work. That's the way we solve health manpower problems, not by posturing and not even asking questions of the people who are trying to make decisions.